Okay, welcome. This is the Wednesday, February 5th meeting of the San Luis Obispo County Flood Control and Water Conservation District Water Resources Advisory Committee. All the meeting to order. First, we'll start with introductions and welcome. Tom Burhan, District 4.
Courtney Howard, County Public Works, Water Resources.
My name is Paul Donnelly. I'm a resident of Norway, Fire Service in Norway.
Dara Landrum, City Council, Norway.
John Winstead, Ag,
Kelly Porter, City of Sloan.
Nick, City of Slope.
Jen Mark, City Council, City of Sloan. Mary Van Ryn, Ag.
Nick DeBarge, City of Tasco. Tim Walters, Road in charge. Peter Brown, OCLC. D. Carter, Slope County Farm. Wes Johnson, Slope County Public Works.
Greg Graywall, Lowell County Cattlemen's Association.
Alan Duckworth, District 5. Doug Grosser, Heritage Ranch, CFG. Todd Duffield, Heritage Ranch, CFG. Ron Lance, Los CFG.
And then starting with Christine.
Christine Mulholland, Environmental at Large.
Eric Greening, also Environmental at Large.
Wendy Lowe, City Council representative.
Jules Tuttle, City Council, Grover Beach.
Eddie Eaton, Photo CSD.
Steve Simpson, Shannon, San Juan Water District.
Steve Chipping, Environmental Nudge. Dominic Brock, Coastal San Luis RCD. David Greger, District 4. Who's in favor with the role engineer?
Anderson, Candice, Public Works, Water Resources.
Very good.
Yeah.
Joey.
Joey Style, SLO County Public Works.
Brendan Clark, County of SLO Public Works, Committee Secretary.
Joey, do we have anybody online?
Yes, we do. Thanks, Chair. I'll go ahead and announce the folks who are in attendance via the Zoom link, and please feel free to introduce yourself. Jeff Edwards.
Yes, good afternoon. My name is Jeff Edwards, a longtime resident from Los Osos in the private sector, land use and development.
Thanks, Jeff. Kelly Dodds.
I am Kelly Dodds, the General Manager of San Miguel Community Service District.
All right, we have Jim.
Yeah, my name's Jim Martirosian from B Sweet Citrus. We're a grower in Edna Valley, and we're participating in the meeting today.
All right, thanks, Jim. L. Nesbitt.
Nesbitt, EPC.
All right, Lori Azim.
Yeah, hi, Lori Azim, new district engineer for Templeton Community Services District.
All right, Mark Zimmer.
Good afternoon, Mark Zimmer, General Manager for Golden State Water Company.
All right, Patricia Wilmore.
Hi, Patricia Wilmore, Paso Robles Wine Country Alliance, Ag at Large alternate.
Thank you. Matt Cook.
How's it going? Matt Cook, Golden State Water Superintendent, Los Osos.
All right, thanks, Matt. Josh Porter.
Hi, Josh Porter, County of San Luis Obispo Public Works, Water Resources Division.
All right, Tim Kershaw.
Hi all, Tim Kershaw, Cleeth Harris Geologists.
Thanks, Tim. Let's see here. Troy Barnhart.
Troy Barnhart, SLO County Public Works, Water Resources.
All right, and I think, oh, and Matt Watkins.
Good afternoon, Matt Watkins, B Sweet Citrus, Director of Farm Operations and farm in Edna Valley and Nipomo.
All right, is there anyone else that we skipped over?
Yeah, this is Jim Green, Cambridge CSD, Utility Director.
Thanks, Jim. Yeah, thanks, Jim.
And Jenny Williamson, County Public Works.
Thanks, Jenny. That's everyone.
Okay, thank you, Joey. Do we have a forum?
Yeah.
Okay, very good. Then we'll proceed with item 2, approval of the November 6, 2024 WRAC meeting minutes. We'll entertain a motion for approval or modification. Is there a second? Second by Christine.
Who's
Sorry, is that you, Tim?
Any discussion?
Who was the second?
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Abstentions? And none. All right, then we'll move on to item 3. Update from county staff regarding the desal plan.
My name is Courtney Howard. If you don't know me, I'm the Water Resources Division Manager and Public Works for the county. Our project manager, Angela Ford, for the desal planning effort is at the desal conference down in Temecula. So subbing in for her today. Just wanted to provide a quick update. We come periodically to the WRAC, and hopefully you found in the agenda packet a link to one of our last presentations. We kind of needed a background. Imagine there's some new folks because of the new year. But real briefly, our first phase was just to make sure that there was interest from some of the larger water purveyors in exploring desalinization as an option for future water supply. And so each of those agencies adopted a resolution saying, yes, please look at it, county. And so that got us going and applying for a grant from the U.S. Bureau of Reclamation through their Water Smart program, which we were able to get to help with our first part of phase 2, which is our planning effort. So we ended up dividing phase 2 into 2 parts after thinking it through some more and to conform to some of the grant requirements. So really what we're trying to do is just open up all of the options and document everything we can think of basically, and then apply kind of a screening criteria to narrow it down to some of the more feasible or ones that look like they could work under various scenarios. So that's kind of what our first part is about, engaging the public route and going through a process to identify concept alternatives and then kind of vet them. In thinking it through, there may be a scenario when we get through the first phase of the process where not one project is identified because there's more questions to answer. And we're kind of envisioning maybe there'll be kind of a short list. And at that point, maybe the beneficiaries will be better understood for those particular scenarios. And then we have kind of that go, no go of, okay, to answer those questions, we may need to invest more in addition to more detailed studies. Those folks that benefit from these concepts that have kind of floated to the top, do you want to chip in to fund that next level of effort? So we've kind of built in these various go, no go decision points into the whole process. So that might be the next one after we get through this grant awarded scope of work. But future phases then would be, getting to that point of, okay, this one checks all the boxes in terms of being able to meet needs and be permitted by the various regulatory agencies. Again, that'll be another point at which we ask the beneficiaries and those that might invest in such a project, whether or not they want to. So there's various phases after this phase and decision points. So that's kind of just big picture of the steps we were kind of envisioning should those that want to build a desal facility eventually get there. But right now, we're in the very kind of beginning of just, what are all the different concepts out there? And then how do they compare to some of the criteria as well? So we have some goals for this first part. Major one is making sure that we have a meaningful and transparent engagement process with the public and all of the interests you could think of that would want to be engaged. And so we are thinking about all the different specific people, all the different kind of interests, thinking about the key milestones with which to pause and receive feedback and then adapt what we're doing as best we can. We're trying various formats, one-on-one interviews, meetings periodically with the WRAC, some roadshows along the coast, our website, forums where you can submit comments at any time. So trying to, have that wide range of opportunities. You can call Angela you can email us. So trying to make sure that there's lots of options, pushing out social media, that sort of thing. So anyway, that's a big goal, is making sure we're as transparent as possible. Another big goal, of course, is the technical part. What are, where are the different locations? What are the potential current and or future needs? What does the state desal guidance say about what they look for in a project that they would approve? All the lessons learned from those that have come before us up and down the coast. We also wanted to do it in a way that conforms to U.S. Bureau of Reclamation feasibility study format. So that way, if folks, agencies that would invest in this kind of a project want to move forward, then they can go for more grants if needed, and it will be eligible because we're following the right format. So that's sort of the framework for our technical analysis, starting with looking up and down the coast and the different concepts, and then applying some screening criteria, which we would develop and then vet publicly to make sure that we're not missing any criteria that we should use, and then applying those criteria to those different concepts to narrow it down. And that's just try to do a visual on that process, where concepts you won't have a great level of detail, but as you get further and further along, you'll need more detail to really hone in on which ones are the most viable. And then on top of all of that is we have a budget, we have a timeline. We got to make sure that we're efficient and possible with our project management. We just awarded the contract in January, and we have to be done with this planning, this phase of the planning effort by October 1st of 2026. So we tried to set up our contract with some flexibility so that we can adapt as we go along, but we'll have to try to move, level of effort around to stay within budget and schedule. So just sort of that reality check. I can't promise the moon, but we'll do our best.
Are you using state money or federal money for any of
It's
this?
federal money at this point,
Oh, whoops.
half of it. Yeah, we're hoping, I'm optimistic that water is important, and so this kind of a project would be important, but we'll see. If not, I think the flood control district has some healthy reserves right now, so if something happened, I think we could still keep planning the effort going.
Morro Bay just recently has used Corolla as our program manager for our sewer. Did you check with us to see if, like, for a referral or for hiring?
Yeah, we did do.
Could you repeat the question, please?
She was asking about the selection process for the consultant we ended up going with for the desal planning effort. So we went through our proposal and interview process for various consultants that submitted their work.
So you interviewed staff in Morro
I believe so. I'll have to ask Angela. I think she did those phone calls. Yeah, let's go with it.
Is the thought that when we get to 2B, that there will be more grants outstanding that's going on now? And I know we need more grants that would be available to kind of fund that piece.
Right, yep, we would look at that continuing with the Water Smart program or other opportunities. If Prop 4 is passed, there might be some opportunity as the state sets up its grants programs.
And are alternative review focused only on desal or on any alternative water source possible services?
That we'll have to see as we get into the needs. I think we'll be relying on what the various water agencies have looked into already and what information is out there. But one of the guidance items from the state is making sure that it's part of an integrated water resources planning effort, that you're optimizing the use of your existing resources, conservation, recycled water, low impact development, kind of having that be a part of showing that even after doing that, we're still going to need something like desal to meet needs going forward. So that would be a part of the process, is showing that If there's data gaps or information that we don't know to answer that question, that would be part of that next phase as well. If we want to move these forward, we're gonna have to understand if that happens or wait for it to happen before you can move forward, because at that point it might not be permittable, or the state might not approve a desal project if we can't show the need yet. So that's part of what would be documented and explored during this process.
Following up on what you just said, Courtney, I have the age-old question about data, and that our master water report and our programs going back 20 some odd years still has data gaps for environmental information. And I wonder if that's going to be addressed. Obviously, there's going to have to be EIRs and other environmental studies done here, but our own master water plans don't have full data. They have data gaps for the environmental sector as long as I've been on this committee.
Yes.
So are we gonna address that first? Are we just gonna go for need, want first?
I can see it being part of a qualitative discussion because, right, we're still working on filling that data gap for a master water report update planning effort. You know, part of that was it's more like a understanding better how environmental needs are more like seasonal, and so in order to tell if supply is meeting demand environmentally, sort of a different kind of a metric than you would use for like housing. So we're working towards setting up like our stream flow measurement program to be more of the metric. So when those attraction flows happen, are the flows happening to attract the fish? So we're still kind of working on that in parallel over a longer term. I think where desal fits in is to what extent, this is sort of one of my questions at the end, is how would desal help relieve pressure on our groundwater watershed systems for the benefit of habitats, fish and those that depend on it in those stream systems? Can we get humans a little less reliant on those to benefit the fish? Is there an opportunity there? That's kind of a trade-off discussion that I'm curious about through this process, if we could explore that as part of this, especially in talking about different exchange concepts.
Yeah, I noticed that some of the entities participating are on the inland side of the Santa Lucia Mountains. And of course, we know that pumping is very expensive, both in energy and in money in terms of getting over the mountains. Are options being explored in which, for example, entities along the Salinas River would participate financially, perhaps helping San Luis Obispo with their share of the bill in exchange for more Salinas River water, so that nothing needs to be pumped over the mountains?
Yes, that's one of the concepts we want to explore in this project. And that's why we wanted to make sure everyone was okay with us exploring those by having the city of Paso, a lot of those North County folks adopted resolutions agreeing to participate in the study so that we could explore those various options.
Yeah, I'm just curious why the Chumash Heritage National Marine Sanctuary hasn't been included as part of the plan for participants, and some of the proposed locations are within protected waters. And this is a new development, but my understanding of desal, which is pretty minimal, is that it also produces kind of plume of very intensely salty water besides everything else. And I'm not sure about what kind of when you're looking at these possible locations, I think it would make sense to explore whether or not the desal would even be allowed in a marine sanctuary. I have no idea. So
yeah, that's definitely a big part of our criteria development. I'll mention it there. So part of the process is identifying the criteria. So, you know, is it in a marine sanctuary and what implications does it have? So if you have this concept of building one along the coast in that area, then it's like, almost like, I don't want to say, it's not it might not be a deal breaker, but it's gonna be a lot harder. And so part of this is documenting why it would be harder. So that's one part of it, is making sure that, yeah, that's gonna be one of the key criteria for ranking the different concepts. But the other one you mentioned was about stakeholder input, and that's one of our first tasks, is to have one-on-one conversations with all the different interests and people that represent the whole gamut. So I think we've identified 4 tribal interests to make sure we communicate with, along with everything else, economic or regulatory agencies, environmental representation, this marine sanctuary, fishing industry, ports. So right now we're going through a process of identifying who we need to make sure we talk directly to, in addition to these opportunities in just like a public setting. And that's going to inform our stakeholder engagement plan that we're going to write up, how we want to approach stakeholder engagement. And so that would be the next time we come to the WRAC, actually, is once we publish that draft. We'll have to review it and then provide input when our consultant teams here. And we're thinking that'll be the main. Those are the 2 things I come to mind for that.
I have a question about PG&E's role within, since I came across a pretty good article about what they were doing researching desalinization decades ago. And they are here in our county, and are they going to play a role in this infrastructure that you're researching?
Yeah, so that's definitely one of the sites that would be one of the concepts. You know, what would it take to use that existing infrastructure? What would it take in terms of working with PG&E? What would it take in terms of the future use of that land? What would it mean to expand the capacity of that plant? Would it open up all the permits, and therefore if it doesn't meet current standards for intakes, then would you have to reconstruct them all anyway? But definitely one of the key stakeholders we'll be engaging with to make sure when we write that concept up and evaluate it, it's as accurate as possible to that point in time, I guess. Well, maybe there'll be some unknowns to watch.
Well, who else is the top stakeholders here? Who are the top 3, 4, 5? I mean, what are you looking for?
So all the well, we'll have it written up in our stakeholder engagement plan, but definitely all the tribes, economic, like chambers, all the water agencies, of course, the advisory committees that are along the coast, like that represent different sites. What's the regulatory agency?
So coastal commission will be in on this too.
Yeah, so round up, I guess you could say. But we're gonna write it all out for you to look at and provide input on.
In terms of the kind of projects, it's been shown that the salinity of water coming out of sewage plants is less than that of the ocean. And with Eric's question about over the drain, is this looking at desal of toilet attack as equally as desal from the ocean?
So you're talking about direct potable reuse?
Yes, direct reuse, desal right out of the sewage plant. And that is being done in Israel and other such places.
So that one might be one of those ones where if it hasn't been explored fully, because I believe they just approved the standards for that now. You know, it's going to be a part of the process to understand which, to what extent the state would want to see that implemented prior to approving desal as an option. maybe that's an economic comparison. You know, so that's part of the process is understanding, you know, what in the state's eyes hits the bar for demonstrating need. And if we haven't hit that bar yet, it may be that we're at a no-go at the end of this phase until those questions are answered.
Gordon, Eric's question about the water. More water coming from the Salinas Reservoir down in South County. You know, for 75 years, that water is supposed to be recharging the basin in Paso. And our job in today's world is supposed to maintain the basin in Paso. And by taking more water from that recharger, not worrying about the habitat or the wildlife in the Salinas River, may benefit South County, but it doesn't benefit North County, nor anybody that lives over the land. And so, to me, that's really a non-starter with anybody that lives up there that's being dictated to on what they can use in their well on their property. When the landowners put all their water use back to a septic system, so it's recharging. And like the city of Paso dumps theirs in the Salinas River and it's exported. But for 135 years, they've been exporting everything they pumped, while everybody else has been recycling what they use. And that's your indication, that's 5,000 acre feet a year that's being dumped in the Salinas River, besides over the last 11 or 12 years, the 10,000 acre feet of Nazi amount of water that's not been put to beneficial use. I think those things need to be looked at. We don't have to rebuild a diesel system that's on cruise ships all over the world and the Navy. These communities, you need to do smaller things that benefit their communities on the seaboard. And even Paso could do it with the sulfur water that they just dumped from the earthquake and back into the river.
I think demonstrating need is going to be one of the key things for whether or not desal goes forward. And one of the concepts would be, you know, for, you know, instead of taking Salinas water, well, right now it's just the city, or the city interested in desal instead. So that's kind of like one of the concepts in terms of exchanges to explore.
I was just wondering how you can determine who the recipients of this water might be and how you will get that water to them.
Yeah, so that would be part of the screening process, and it could be that would be the next phase once we kind of whittle it down and see who, you know, is looking at like they would have needs in the future or currently. So that would probably come towards the end. Probably talk, you know, conceptually about, you know, at what point is need being demonstrated. And if that point happens, then these sites makes most sense to meet that need.
One of the locations you put in here is the old Wall Bay Power Plant. And last year, Wall Bay was asked about looking at where a road for the people to change the zoning in the location. So I don't know if that would be pursuing.
So that's what we're looking to document in this study, is that so everyone knows, why are you looking at that one? It's like, well, here you go, until this changes, or unless we did a vote and they approved it. That's what would need to happen to make desal this location feasible.
Right, it could be improved. By the voters. Given how we go to the board.
So our goal in this part of the study is to bring all that to light for everybody.
I was just gonna say, desal plants create quite an extensive amount of toxicity with the brine as well as copper and sulfates used to, you know, due to remove the salt, as well as copious amounts of energy. Where is all this gonna come from?
That's what we're gonna try to look into. Where would it need to come from?
And then who's gonna bear the brunt of this? When you think of Morro Bay and what we passed on A24, you know, we clearly stated we did not want industry in our town. Is this pushing funds that don't need to be pushed into communities for a desal plant when you know straight away that it's not going to fly?
So everything up and down the coast is on the table and any interests are on the table. And so our goal through that is to bring all of that to light, both for and against, or interested never, or interested only in these conditions. That's the point of this part of the study, is to write down what we're saying and make sure everyone understands why we're not doing it there, or what would it take to do it there, or what would need to change to do it there, or what needs would need to be demonstrated for the state to say, oh, okay, yes, I agree, you have a need. So that's what we're trying to vet or explore in this part.
And that's classic to a feasibility study. So any feasibility study has to look at the impacts, costs, alternatives. There's something cheaper, better, more desirable, all those things.
These are questions on my mind. There's lots of questions. I just threw some more out there in case it helped, but these are great.
One question is, taking Los Angeles, for example, we've been hearing there that they want a pipeline across South Bay Boulevard to connect with state water. Presumably with only 16,000 people in Los Angeles, that will be incredibly expensive. So it would seem to me that all your various groups in here have to work out, I would presume, what the next best thing is, or worst thing is, regarding compared with costing desalinization. Would Los Angeles, for example, at the expected cost of desal, be more expensive or less expensive than state water, and would state water in fact even be available in Los Angeles? So it would seem that you're doing this centrally, but are all your members doing that kind of calculation and feeding in on their relative economics at the same time?
Yeah, I imagine when we get to the data collection part early on, we'll find out who has looked at the alternatives for their agency, who hasn't. And to the extent that there's data available that we can do more of a high level analysis, then we'll do our best to include that as part of that needs analysis and demonstration of what optimization would look like.
So this needs analysis will break down domestic use versus farming use, and will it identify opportunities for farming to improve their irrigation practices? I mean, really, we're kind of looking at the bigger picture here. Because this desal thing is out there, fresh drinking water consuming, but there's other ways to save water.
Yeah, to what extent is do we need to demonstrate water sufficiency? We're working on that with our master water report, developing a way to communicate how we're doing as a county collectively on water sufficiency. So we're exploring that in our other parallel effort of our countywide master water report. Oh, very good. Thank you.
That sort of brings up a question I had. I've been told in the past that the state is unlikely to permit a ocean desal facility unless the entities requesting it are making full or partial use of recycled water. Is that a actual regulation, or is it just sort of common knowledge? Because I was looking for it, I couldn't find it anywhere.
I will pull out the line item from the guidance document and could provide it. But that, in reading it, that was our interpretation of showing that you are implementing integrated regional water management. And I think it says such as conservation and recycled water. You have to go back and look, but that's sort of showing how desal would be an important part of your portfolio is part of
Thank you.
And I'll just say, I think in the technical analysis, with the discharge, going back to the brine discussion, you need, typically it's the ones that got permitted are blending with discharge from treatment plants. So it's sort of, maybe it's not 100% because you still need blending. if as we're going through that, who knows if even that will change in terms of brine management and some of the toxicity that's.
So, a related thing, I thought I heard you say it earlier, the state saying that the regulations that they will apply is dependent on the criticality of our need. So if we have a higher criticality, they'll cut some regulations out, we don't have to meet.
Not cut regulations, but, if you demonstrate need and you've optimized the use of your existing resources and you still show that you need desal to be resilient, then that kind of checks their box in looking at what they need to check to make sure that they're okay with you permitting that project.
Same question. Is there a rule of thumb, current number for what the anticipated cost of desal water is compared to other sources?
I don't want to throw out numbers, I should have come with numbers, sorry. I want to say $3,000 to $4,000 acre foot, but that would be part of what we want to document.
Talking about build out in 20 years in 2045, so we don't know what things are gonna cost.
Good point. Yeah, that's another lesson learned is,
This is a
you know,
20-year project.
I think we had that conversation at our kickoff meeting. I was like, well, can we just say really expensive? Because I don't want to promise any numbers at this stage of the process, but we can share what, once that were built, you know, what it's costing.
But similarly, in 20 years, when the criticality goes up, the rates for current water sources are going to go up too.
And, you know, aging infrastructure, you know, do we keep investing in our, you know, older paradigm type supply systems? You know, that's a question in my mind, as our infrastructure ages, but on the flip side, we're gonna wanna rely on that distribution infrastructure to get the water from the desal plant around, so maybe there's no avoiding investing in aging infrastructure anyways. Anyway, that's, you know, part of the process is trying to explore all that and document so that everyone can communicate all those factors. Yeah, again, why wasn't it built 10 years ago? Again, it should never be built. We need to live within our means. So we're trying to like go through a process that can communicate, well, these are kind of all the factors that are going into desal as an option.
Thank you, Courtney. I think next up is Wes with our update on Delta conveyance.
Wes, if you want to use that, you can. Well, yeah. Should be good to go.
Thanks, Courtney. That was a lot of good questions there.
And that work depends on your work.
It's a good transition here because, again, I'm Wes Thompson with Sill County Public Works. The question is, how do we optimize our existing supplies? State water is one of those. Thank you for sharing some of your time with me today so that I can provide you an update on ongoing work with the Delta Conveyance Project. I'm just gonna kind of launch into this and then give you a quick overview, talk about what the district's committed to date, some of the work that's been completed, and then I'd like to really keep you informed about the upcoming requests that we're going to make to the Board of Supervisors here later this month for some additional funding. And then we'll have some time, hopefully at the end, for some questions. All right, so the Delta Conveyance Project is a proposed infrastructure project that would address conveyance challenges in the Delta, moving water from the State Water Project from the north end of the Delta down to the south end where the California Aqueduct is. You've probably seen that if you're driving along the I-5 freeway. That water right now relies on an existing network of aging levees that are at risk of failure due to seismic activity. There are challenges with managing the water quality in the Delta and operating this project. The federal government under the U.S. Bureau of Reclamation operates the Central Valley Project. Those are the two big water projects in the Delta. This particular infrastructure project, being the tunnel, is a component of the larger state water project that is currently being proposed. The Department of Water Resources for the state is leading the effort in partnership with the 29 state water contractors. And essentially the idea is to provide an additional 2 set of diversion intakes at the north end of the Delta. And then that water would be conveyed about 45 miles to the south end, where it would be pumped up into an existing reservoir facility called the Bethany Reservoir. So that's where it gets the name, the Bethany Reservoir Alignment. Some of the main objectives of this project are to mitigate the seismic risk, which I mentioned. For us, this supply provides geographic diversity of our water supply portfolio. So that's something that we're interested in protecting when we talk about delivery reliability. This project would, over the long term, if we participate, we would see increased allocations to the district for the state water supply. And we're working on getting an updated cost factor that would show what the benefit would be, the cost benefit in terms of acre feet per year. But in 2020, we were roughly around $255 an acre foot. So I kind of hit on the goal already. Again, it's to protect the ability to deliver state water project to California, also includes Slope County. For us, what this really looks like is hopefully protections against anticipated further reductions in the long-term average of the allocation. That would be somewhere in the 2,500 to 4,200 acre feet per year. Our goal, coming off of looking at other supplies in the county, one of the county's goals is to maximize its state water supply. For us, that's a reliability factor. It's also resiliency. So we keep this supply up and running and deliver to our communities, like City of Morro Bay, for instance, that provides their community and others who rely on that supply with added security. So the Delta Conveyance Project is a concrete step we can take towards achieving these goals. Here's a kind of an overview of the communities that receive state water. There are 11 subcontractors. There are potentially new ones on the horizon. Communities like Los Osos who've expressed an interest in being able to get access to state water. There are about 6 subcontractors, I think, on the WRAC. Apple Beach CSD, Oceano CSD, City of Morro Bay, City of Pismo Beach, CMC, and Cuesta College. So the district committed funding in 2020 and in 2022. That's lasted us about 5 years. That'll get us through 2025. We're in basically the initial planning phase, which includes permitting, design, addressing water rights, environmental review. DWR completed the environmental impact review under CEQA in December of 2023, and also prepared an updated cost estimate in 2024. In terms of current projected costs, it was in 2020 around $16 billion, counting for inflation, and the project costs have remained relatively steady. It's currently pegged at around $20 billion. So the reality is, if we're going to continue on, we've got to have additional funding. And there is revenue from the 2024 water transfer that would be sufficient to cover the district's portion of its share for the planning. And then some of the other subcontractors participated in that transfer, like Oceano, for instance. The credit they would get from the water transfer would be sufficient to cover that need as well for them. Morro Bay is going to get a credit. Their Pismo will get a credit that will cover theirs. Morro Bay is not sufficient because they didn't participate to the extent that Oceano and Pismo participated. I've got numbers on that if you're interested in seeing that. In the staff report included in the agenda packet, there's a breakdown on what the costs for participation is for the district and how that breaks down to each of the other state water subcontractors. We're gearing up to go to the board on February 25th. We will also be recommending that the district board make limited findings under CEQA to address the pre-construction work. That work is necessary in order to refine the design and complete the planning effort. It wouldn't be until 2027 right now that we would be asked to approve and commit to the broader DCP. There's kind of a set of milestones. We made a commitment in 2020, again in 2022. We're now in 2025. Question is, do we keep the door open? And then we expect to come back in 2027 if we keep the door open now. So that's where we're at right here.
I've got a question that I was not only telling clients today.
Yeah.
And that is that if the feds are going to take more water for the federal water projects, and you still have Endangered Species Act and Water Quality Act issues for Carquinez Springs, then the state will only be able to use less water bring out of its system in order to maintain the water quality in the delta. But the more the Fed takes, the less the state can take. And it may be a major issue. And the LA Times was saying if this happened, there would actually be quite a restriction on how much water would come to clients for the state water project. But you need to keep an eye on this one. The other thing I don't understand, and this is something the Sierra Club and everyone else has been at, is that how taking water out of the top of the delta and putting it in the tube is different from taking water out of the bottom of the delta as far as reliability of supply. How do you gain the efficiency of supply? I mean, the adequacy of supply simply by moving the intake.
That's a complex question.
It-
We're trying to tackle that.
I think the simple answer
Give
is
Steve a
it
shot.
takes a lot of water to hold the seawater back, and the delta, when it goes around close to Carquinez, it has to come back. So it draws salt water behind it when you pump around the delta.
An additional question, when you're answering that, a related question, is one of the justifications for this is the lack of earthquake resiliency in the current status quo. And given that the whole delta is saturated alluvium with the Calaveras fault running right through it, and saturated alluvium acts like jello when everything else is acting like the bowl, how would this project be more earthquake resilient than the status quo, and what would that cost? So that's another branch of your question.
Yeah, those are all good questions. That one of the strategies to address the seismic resilience needed for a project like this is just to bury it. So this tunnel would be around 150 or so feet underground. So that goes a long ways towards addressing some of the seismic protections needed. But you're right, they're only gonna design to a certain standard and, it's a ground movement, right, so it's,
Eric, I think your number is that a lot of the delta is set up around 100 and 150-year-old levees that haven't been structurally reinforced. And so the earthquake implications of the surface water, the levees breaking down is where you have all the issues. But you can structurally design this tube way down to the ground so that even at a 7 or 8 magnitude, it can still hold it and not be vulnerable. The other part is where the American River comes in to the Sacramento Delta has a big impact in pulling the water from above that and bringing it underground is part of why this project provides a lot of resilience to state water subcontractors. All of that water is allocated at Oroville, whereas federal water comes from Shasta. So both of those just be.
Yeah, I mean, it's a good question. I mean, the reality is they're gonna design it up to handle a certain size event. And so it's not to say that it's gonna be 100% resistant to failure.
The slide with the.
Yep.
So can you explain, keep the door open again?
Yep, so we're, there's my red arrow here. If, in order to continue with this effort, we've got to contribute our share of the planning costs. And that keeps the door open for us to keep on the train. It hasn't left the station yet, but they'll ask us to get off the train if we don't pony up and, so the board will make that decision. Yeah, no. So this right now, in 2025, the board will have to decide whether or not to make the contribution for planning to continue to keep the door open.
Finding
So,
a door stop that costs 1.8 million, basically.
yep.
And of that 1.8, how much of it is spent by your research? How much of it is going to the state and federal side for the overall?
That this next effort for 2026 to 2027 is $300 million. So that 1.86 is part of 300 million.
That's just the county.
No, the county's cost would be the 1.86 million. The 300 million is for all of the state water contractors that are participating.
But are you paying any money locally for your staff and so forth out of that 1.8, or is it all going to the state?
That's all going to the state. Yeah, not for local costs. Yeah.
Wes, one of your other slides, you said that there was enough money from the water sales, the water transfers. Cover that. You know, everybody in the county pays taxes for that.
Yep.
But not everybody gets a benefit from the state water. So how can you tax somebody with no benefit and then take a sales from the water we paid for and use it for something else?
You think it's the water.
I get what? I've been paying for 25 years for state water. I never got a drop. But I keep getting taxed, and now you made sales and the court said you had to put that money in the proper account. It should be returned to the taxpayers, not spent on some of the program where they get zero benefit. If the people getting the benefit want the project, then they should fund the project.
Yeah, the board will have to decide whether to keep those revenues in its state water project tax fund or use it to offset other revenue generating measures, and whether or not to participate in the project and how those costs will be allocated.
So we're not being asked to make a recommendation one way or the other.
No, I mean, in 2020, the WRAC voted not to recommend participation. So our presumption is that your position hasn't changed. And so we are reiterating that to the board to not participate. The subcontractors advisory committee recommended to participate.
Staff has some recommendation.
The staff is recommending to continue to participate. That's the staff recommendation.
If I understand the Brown Act correctly, if this was agendized as an information item, the public would not have known we were going to make a decision if we wanted to change that direction. So I don't think under the Brown Act that we could.
Just a report.
It's an agendized item.
It's just an, yeah,
Right.
I don't know if that keeps the committee from taking action to change its position.
Action.
Are we doing on time?
I'd be willing to take a provisional and act, if it was, the committee was interested in taking a revote. And then I could double check on, if it becomes official record or not.
I'd be very nervous about that.
Okay, that's fine too. I'm
I
just,
personally think it's moot because this train's already down the track and it's not gonna stop on our say so.
Any other questions for Wes?
I'll be hanging out in the back. If you have any other questions you want to talk later, we have to talk.
And I think we may be seeing Wes next month on a state water policy update.
Yep, we'll be back. I'll be back early May for another update on the
early March?
I'm sorry, early March. We're going in, we're targeting May for the board, but yeah, early March. So
Perfect.
great. Thank you.
All right. We'll move on to item 5, ongoing updates. Now let's go through them here. Rain and reservoir report. Drought updates.
I wanted to add.
Oh, yeah.
I just wanted to highlight, for the rain and reservoir report, obviously does not capture what we've received the last, 48 hours or so and what we'll get tomorrow. But I did include it, if I can flip there in time, apparently not. An interesting chart that shows the variation of rainfall across the state. Very clear depiction of Northern California getting, yes, thank you, that would be it. Northern California getting the rain that they normally get, and Southern California not getting the rain that they normally don't get. So if I did all the negatives there correctly. So I just want to show that I added that chart and also put the drought monitor back in as we were included in the in one of the categories there. So when we're below average in rainfall, I try to include those charts just as FYI. So
Most dramatic difference I can remember between north and south. This season.
Yeah, like
We had differences. This is huge.
like why the projects exist.
Comment that we have that kind of variance here in our own county, and this morning I looked at the rain reports from all over the county. And I didn't see anybody that had as much as I did. I had over 3 inches, 3.07.
Whoa.
3.07 in my back.
That's 0.07.
3.07, 3 inches and
Yeah.
700.
That's what our gauge on top of Cuesta Ridge got, 3 inches, yeah.
That's what I had.
Anything else on rain? Oh, go ahead. Anything else on rain and reservoir?
Yeah, I'll tell you, just go past Shasta a few days ago. And Shasta is full and the Sacramento River is full up to the south of the banks and flowing great. So I don't know where they're sending that water, but that's a solution. Good time to be sending it to the San Luis Reservoir.
Drought update. Groundwater basin management efforts. Flood control zones.
I might, this is zone 9, just to let people know who drive around in our city here, that the 20+ year plan to do some work on the mid-High section of our San Luis Obispo Creek will be starting here this winter, and throughout the next couple of years to increase flood control and increase capacity in that little section.
Very good.
And on the groundwater basin management efforts, the
Yes.
in that this week to kind of dig into our strategic plan was 5 years, last one, so updating the strategic plan for the South County.
And when do you think that plan will be out?
It should be coming to those jurisdictions, councils, this spring or summer.
Very good. Look forward to it. All right. Integrated regional water management. Master water report. Brendan, remind me, when is that coming to the, is that later this spring? Master water report?
Yeah, that's the idea.
Okay, good. State water project. One comment on that. We had, there was a draft that was circulated to the members and other interested parties here of the state water policy update from the county staff. I think we sent that out in December, was it? Asking for comments. We only received 2 sets of written comments. Thank you, David. And so we're hoping before Wes comes out with the new version, or when he comes out with a new version, it'll be well in advance of our March meeting, and it will be circulated to you for comment. I think it'd be very helpful for our discussion when he comes, if people were to submit written comments beforehand, so that Wes can see them, ourselves can see them, and become prepared for a thoughtful discussion. So look for that. Yes.
Yeah, the last call for comments is get them to me by February 21st.
Okay, is there a new version though?
There will be a new version floated on Friday, so we'll send this out to the WRAC as well. If you're on the email list, you'll get a copy of it.
All right. So everybody get your red pencils ready. Thank you, Wes.
Yep.
Okay, desalinization. Earlier, anything else on that? Various county water programs, policy and ordinances. Yes, sir.
One thing that isn't on the list here, but that might be of interest to us, is that through County Emergency Services, the update of the multi-jurisdictional hazard mitigation plan has begun and will be proceeding through the year. And obviously, some of the hazards involved include flooding, drought, etc. And so I'm just mentioning that that's going on, that the issue is headquartered in the emergency services. And when we get to the next item, I might have a little follow-up about that.
Right.
Potential agenda items.
All right, and then lastly, under item 5 is open reporting on water conservation opportunities and information. Okay, then we will go to future agenda items, and Eric, I think you have a comment.
I guess the question is, are we interested in having a presentation from emergency services and or the consultants working on an update of the multi-jurisdictional hazard mitigation plan? To understand how it cross-references. Obviously, I think the boards will be acting on it as the supervisors rather than as the flood control and water conservation district. But since flooding is a very vital piece of it, a huge piece, along with things like tsunamis, earthquakes, drought, etc. Our role in it, they're actively looking for stakeholders and interested parties to participate in providing wisdom for the update. And so I'm just going to throw it open. Are we interested in having a presentation? And I don't know that it would need to be an action item because we wouldn't be approving a document in process, but it could be a way to get information back to all of our different jurisdictions and just to have an important session about it.
I agree. So that's something we're definitely tracking and looking at. I think the next public meeting for the HMP update is in May. So we could have some time to get ahead of that. You know, personally, if OES was able to come, that would be fantastic. So
Great.
OES is the
Office of Emergency.
Office of Emergency Services, so of the county. Just want to make sure everyone knew that. I throwing acronyms around.
I'd be happy to speak to you about how staff is participating in that process for rain, drought, and flood mitigation.
I'd be interested in hearing from Los Osos, there's an intersection between the removal of the building ban and a very small incremental allowance of new demand under the acceptance also of the Habitat Conservation Plan. And the condition of the aquifer, which I was led to believe is not necessarily improving. So I'd like to see when the water issues underground intersect with the increased demand of the lack of the building ban, which comes to the issue of desalinization. I'm wondering whether you could ask Los Osos if they'd like to make a presentation on the groundwater trends versus the up demand, and then the two lines intersect.
That would be the CSD there.
CSD, yes.
I feel like that's a BMC appropriate discussion. But if there's, if it's something like lessons learned from that would benefit the countywide, that could be appropriate. But I do think there's a form specific to those, those questions and, how that's put together, with planning, and that it's not just the CSD, but with Golden State and others who provide water there. They have that specific forum.
I'd be happy with just a couple of graphs. One is what the water levels are doing, and two, what the demand is doing.
Yeah,
I mean,
the
just a simple intersection.
yeah. Well, the annual report will come out in 4 months.
It may be of interest that in terms of the smattering of citizens who turned out for the sort of town hall workshop on the first step of the hazard mitigation plan, there was a disproportionate share of folks from Los Osos sharing concerns about both drought, water quality, flooding, etc. So it might be that they would also show up here when we're looking at that plan, especially if they knew it was happening.
Any other thoughts about future agenda items?
We did mention last time that potential regional water quality control board presentation.
We did. I don't know if we've got one scheduled.
What was that in the well testing specifically, or was there a different topic?
Yeah.
Altogether, if you would refresh me on that one.
Actually, what the programs are doing, or what they're more or less what their programs. I'm interested in the agricultural side, but
Yeah. Okay. Even or the general, like, what are you guys doing over there?
Yeah.
Okay.
Thank you for the reminder.
I have a question then.
Yes,
Do you-
ma'am.
Have you ever invited like Western growers here to discuss water management? Their association here is huge in California. Just kind of wondering, have we reached out to discuss water management? No, there's several organizations. They're huge in the farming sectors.
Any other thoughts? Right. Public comment for items not on the agenda. What do you have, Greg?
This is something that the governor just signed here, another executive order for stormwater capture projects. Fast track that, but we've been talking about this for the last 12 years. And with everything that's been going on and the things that for some reason only benefit certain people, the one that would benefit the basin the most, that needs to be in before you actually have the storms. We never seem to be able to figure that one out with part of the GSP, the Paso Basin, was the interconnectivity of the surface water to the groundwater. And those alluvial areas that were picked out would be where you would have the stormwater projects, whether they be bladder dams or some other kind of weirs or whatever. And you're getting free water. All you're doing is slowing it up from a narrow spot to where it spreads out into a wider spot where it has time to penetrate into the alluvial areas. So I've looked up personally myself on what these dams cost, what it takes to do that, and it's relatively inexpensive compared to blending water, spending 85 million in infrastructure, spending 60-something million for infrastructure for a few acre feet of state water and so on and so forth, when you're not even sure you're going to get the water. And this water comes, if not 2 or 3 years in a row, and then we don't get a little, and then we get it again. I think there's more potential there for something that's low-hanging fruit.
I think that's a good point, Greg, and I think that's what Courtney touched on in her presentation about alternatives to desal. And tend to agree that it's cheap and skinny. I think desal is not cheap. So, there might be a lot of other cheaper alternatives we'll have to run through first before we go to desal. That's just my personal opinion. All right. Any other comments and items not on the agenda? All right. In that case, we'll adjourn the meeting. We'll see everybody in 4 weeks. And if you're of a like mind, enjoy the soup.
Super Bowl.